In this video, we'll look at asynchronous programming in JavaScript and the fetch API. Asynchronous programming allows you to perform tasks without blocking the main thread, making it possible to handle operations like network requests, file reading, or timers more efficiently. This is particularly important in JavaScript because it runs on a single-threaded event loop. So normally in JavaScript, when you write your code, it is executed one line after the other. So for instance, when I just say console.log first tags and then copy this down twice and then change this one to second and then finally this to third tags, and I go to my terminal and run my code using node, we get what? First task, second task, and then third task. So it means our code is executed one line after the other. So we say it is what? Single threaded. But with asynchronous programming, we can perform a task later. So I'll just go ahead using a callback function called setTimeout, which is what? Which helps us to write asynchronous programming in JavaScript. So I'll just say setTimeout, which takes a callback function and then a duration as its parameters or its argument. So I'll just put a duration of 2000 milliseconds here, which is equivalent to 2 seconds. So I'll just go ahead and then cut the second task and then put it here and save. And then the third task, I'll put it under the callback function here or the set timeout function here and save. So what this is doing is that we have console.log first task, then we have a set timeout function here, and then console.log third task. So let's see how this code will be executed using node. So we get first task, third task, and then finally second task. So this shows how asynchronous programming works in JavaScript, helping us to perform a task later and then later come back to it. So even when I change this to, let's say, 1 second or 1000 milliseconds and run my code again, we got first task, third task, sorry, and then finally third task printed in the console. So that is how asynchronous programming works in JavaScript. Let's go ahead and then look at promises, which is built on asynchronous programming in JavaScript. So promises provide a more powerful and flexible way to handle asynchronous operations compared to callbacks. So these are callback functions, so I can continue to nest in more callback functions. So I can still say set timeout here and then pass in something. Let's say I'll just put 2000 milliseconds here, and then I'll just console.log let's say fourth task and save. So we can continue to nest in. So let me just clear the terminal quickly and then run my code, and run my file using those. So we have first task, third task, second task, and then finally fourth task. So we can continue to nest in more callback functions, and we will get what we call the callback hell, which is not good. So we use promises to deal with this callback hell or callbacks in JavaScript when working with asynchronous programming. So promises provide a more powerful and flexible way to handle asynchronous operations compared to callbacks. A promise represents the eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous operation and its resulting value. So let's look at how we can write a promise in JavaScript using the promise object. So I'll say const promise equals new promise. So we use the new keyword here to initialize a promise object. So it takes two parameters, so which is the resolve, and these are functions, resolve and then the reject functions, and then I'll return set timeout. So set timeout, and we know what it does. I'll put in let's say 2000 milliseconds, which is equivalent to 2 seconds. Then I'll call the resolve function, and then I'll just say data fetched and save. Let me write that properly. I can't spell fetch. Good, I've done it. So we call the resolve function, and then we are passing this data fetch string to it. Now what we have to do is we have to use the then and then the catch methods to handle the data that is returned from the promise. So write the name of the promise dot, then we use the dot then method, and this is where the data will be returned to us. So I'll just console.log the data, and then we can use the catch. Let me just close my terminal quickly. With the dot catch method, we can catch any error that is being returned, let's say maybe because of bad network or something. So uh, console.log, let me say error occurred, and save. So this is how we work with promises in JavaScript. So when I go to my terminal and then clear it quickly, let's see what happens. So in 2 seconds, we see you get data fetch because we are resolving the data. When we use the reject method, or sorry, the reject function over here, whatever error that is being returned from the server or wherever we are fetching our data from will be console.log for us. So another way to work with, because this dot then and dot catch methods also give us callback hell. We have the async await keyword, which is like a syntactic sugar built on promises. So the async stroke await is a syntactic sugar built on top of promises, making asynchronous code look and behave more like synchronous code. So functions declare with async return a promise, and await can be used to pause the execution of an async function until the promise is resolved. So let's look at an example and of this async await way of writing the same promise that we just did right now. So I'll just go ahead and close my terminal quickly. So we use the async keyword, then I'll say function, or better still, okay, I'll show you how to use the arrow function syntax and then the function declaration syntax. So I'll just say fetch data. So we will say let promise, so I can use const or let. So I'll just use, so new promise here. So this will take the resolve, and then no, let me do this properly. So this will take the resolve, then the reject functions, and then we'll just return what? Set timeout. I'm just using set timeout here. This also return a callback function, and then we'll just put 2000 milliseconds here. So I'll just call the resolve function and then say data fetched here and save. Then we say let data equals await. So we use the await keyword, then we await what? The promise. Sorry, this should be in the function, not outside of the function. So we say let data equals await. So await keyword can only be used in an async function. So we say await what? Promise, and save. So later on, the data will be returned, and then we can just console.log the data. So since this is a function declaration, when we run our code, nothing will happen. So whenever we define function, we have to call function or execute the function before we can get whatever logic is being written in the function. So when I run my code in 2 seconds, so we get data fetch for us. So this is how we use the async await keyword to write asynchronous programming or promises in JavaScript to make it look as if it is a synchronous code, but it is what? An asynchronous operation. So when I just say, maybe after this function call, I can still say console.log, let's say 1 2 3 4 5. We'll see console.log 1 2 3 4 5 in the terminal first. So you see that we have it in the terminal first, and then after some 2 seconds, we have what? Our data fetch resolve data that is being returned from the promise. So this is how we can use function declaration to what? Write promise. So let me just turn this into an arrow function for you quickly. So I can say const fetch data. Let me just put arrow here. So we use what? The async keyword here, and then I'll just go ahead and then copy this logic here or this code here and then paste it here, and then I'll say let data again, or let response, equals what? Await, then promise, then we await the promise, and then later on we'll just console.log what? The data and save. So this is how we can use the arrow function to what? Define an async function. So I'll just go ahead and then comment this one out quickly so that let's see. So I can come here and say fetch data arrow function, and when I clear my terminal and run my code, hopefully we get what? Data fetch printed in the console. So this is the arrow function version of the initial function we have written. So let's look at how we can fetch data from an API. So I'll just go ahead and show this to you quickly. So this is JSON placeholder. It's a mock API that is a fake free reliable API for testing and prototyping. So we'll be fetching data. So you can see that we have this JavaScript code here. So I'll just go ahead and copy the URL quickly. So let's look at how we can use the fetch API in JavaScript to fetch data from what? An API in our code. So let me just say let me just paste the URL here. Sorry, not that. Good. And then comment it. I'm not going to use this one. I'll use the post, the one that goes to the post, and then save here. So this is our URL. Let me just comment it out. So I'll just say const fetch post equals what? Our async. Then I'll say const, or const response equals await. Then we use the fetch keyword here. So this is available in JavaScript, which is, so we pass our URL here. So I'll just go ahead and then copy the URL. So the fetch is built on top of promises in JavaScript. So we are fetching from this API. Then I'll say const data or result is equal to or let me just say post is equal to, then we use the await keyword, then we await res dot what? Sorry, not that. Await res dot JSON and save. So later on I can just console.log all the posts that is being gotten from this API, and then I'll go ahead and fetch and call my function, my fetch post function. So let's go to the terminal. Let me clear this quickly and then run my app. Hopefully good. So you can see that our post is being what? Printed in the console. I think in the terminal, I think it gets by default the first 100 posts. So this is an array of what? Objects. So this is how we can use the fetch function, which is built on top of promises in JavaScript, to fetch data from an API. So that is it. So I can go ahead and then maybe save since this is an object, which is an array of objects, I can say dot what? I think we have the title, so I can say dot title and save. When I go and then clear my terminal and then run my app, oh, we are getting undefined. Let me see what is wrong. First of all, let me fetch the post again. Okay, since this is an array of objects, so I'll just get the first array and then console.log the title of the first array. So that's my bad. That's why so we get the title of the first element object, which is the title of the first element in the array. So that is it about so we can, since this is an array, we can use array methods on it to do something else. You can get maybe the first 10 object array objects from the array. So using the slice method, so you can say post.slice and then maybe the first 10 and then objects from the array. When I run my code, so we get the first 10. So you can see the last one here is having an ID of 10. So 8, 7. So that is it. So that is all about asynchronous programming in JavaScript, and then the fetch API, how we can use the fetch API to fetch data from an API in JavaScript. That's all for this video. Please subscribe and follow for more videos and contents like this. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.